What's going on, Jerome's? The NFL Combine is upon us. That means pressers are going down. Kwesi met with the media jackals today. Kevin O'Connell's meeting with them tomorrow. And Kwesi had some very interesting things to say. Now, with Spielman, I trust Spielman as far as I can throw him. And Kwesi, I mean, he's obviously not a rube or a neophyte, but also I think that he likes providing legitimate answers versus just spin, if that makes sense. He talked about a number of issues that we'll get into. Number one, he's super fired up at Brian Flores. And why wouldn't you? Like, you have a head coach caliber coordinator who's going to bring heat and stank and aggressiveness to that defense. So Kwesi's fired up, as well as he talked about trading in division. And he talked about that the easiest way to make the playoffs is to win your division. You don't want to enrich your divisional opponents, but Kwesi talked about how he sees himself in this job for many years and doesn't want to be seen as the GM who just swoops in as the vulture, and takes advantage of a team when they're up against it. And he said that you can find win-wins where if team has short-term issues or long-term issues, etc., that trades can be a win-win. And some of his trades last year, whether it be in draft with the Lions or the Packers or trading in season with Detroit for Hawkinson, they can be win-wins. All right, so we'll see what happens. But Kwesi, I'm building a team. As a GM, my job isn't to hit on draft picks. His 2022 class, yeah, about that. This isn't a dartboard I'm just throwing. The job is to build a championship team within a time window. If I get fired in 4 years and all my picks hit after that, I don't get to go back and say, hey, look at all those people I drafted. It's my job to put it all together in the same time frame, same horizon. And I think that could speak to the Vikings. Super Bowl window is open right now. 13 games won last season, despite some of the veteran contracts that were on the books. And, I mean, you could say that the Vikings won 13 games. You could say that it's a fluke. You could say it's this, that, or the other thing. But this is a very talented roster at its core, especially on offense, which it's an offensive league. So if the defense can get its ish together and get some aggression back there and get a little bit of a pass rush, all of a sudden things are really starting to come together. And he talks about hitting on draft picks, where I know last year he traded down, and acquired picks. Maybe it's different this year because the Vikings entered the draft projected with only 5 draft picks, no second rounder. So maybe he condenses some of those picks. Maybe he uses some of those picks on going after an immediate need right now, or potentially a quarterback in the future, which we'll get to. Kevin Seifert, who is not Carl Gershman, summary. Listen to Kwesi, blah, blah, blah. No surprise, they called the contract extension with Justin Jefferson a high priority. He added, I don't want to be the Vikings GM without that guy on our team. Basically, if you want to trade for him, it's going to cost you 4 ones. No direct answer when asked if he anticipated running back Dalvin Cook would remain on the rooster. Noted great player, great leader, but in the NFL, you have a lot of constraints, salary cap, different things, and we're trying to figure out how we can operate in those things. So Dalvin's gone. 100%. The other Dalvin seemed to be very interested in getting Dalvin Tomlinson back. The sides agreed to push out the void date of the defensive tackle's contract to buy ourselves a little more time. He's a great guy, great player, and we love him. And speaking of guys that we love, Kirk Cousins. So Pelissero reported yesterday that a 1-year deal, 1-year extension probably wasn't going to happen. Vikes Insider summed up what Kwesi was saying about quarterbacks, jumping down to about halfway down. Kirk Cousins meets that threshold. Blah, 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 blah. Different quarterbacks require different things around them, but we know that for sure Kirk Cousins meets that threshold of being able to win a championship with him. How long does he meet that threshold? Valid question, especially when it comes to a long-term deal. Those are things we need to answer. Is there a chance to add somebody maybe with different skill sets? These are all questions we got to answer, so there's not one right way, but I do know one thing. He is good enough. He's good enough, he's smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like him. And he meets the first threshold. That's a question a lot of people can't answer with a yes, so we have to make sure we treat that in proper importance that it is. So Kwesi. Again, Kwesi, gives amazing answers. Like he talked about necessary and sufficient conditions in math. And then he talked about how Kirk Cousins checks that box, that first necessary condition of making sure you're going to go win if your quarterback is above a certain level. And Kirk is that guy. You can't say that about every single guy. And there's a reason why Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell hitched their wagons to Kirk Cousins last season. But will they do it again? Will they do it long term? Will they go get their own guy? TBD. Also, in a moment that I thought was very telling, Vikings Insider Go. When asked about the linebacker position at the NFL Combine, Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah mentioned Asamoah, Troy Dye, and even Willing Kwenku, the UDFA from Temple. Not a word about Kendricks or Jordan Hicks, who were both under contract for 2023. Also, were both your starters in 2022. And I think that does say a lot. When he was talking about the off-ball linebacker position, you don't mention the two guys that started for you last year, and both are going to be cap casualties, both of them. Yeah, I think both are gone, and also both of them don't have any trade value, so it's not like Kwesi has to play that game where it's like, of course they're going to be back. So I think that says a lot. I think Kwesi said everything by saying nothing at all about Kendricks and Hicks. Like I said, Kwesi's different than Spielman. I feel like Kwesi actually gives legitimate answers. Now, maybe that will change after he's GM for a couple years and he gets a little bit jaded, but this isn't the constant Rick spin. We have no intention of trading Percy Harvin at this time. It was like, I don't foresee us trading Stephon Diggs, all that stuff. I think Kwesi actually gives legitimate answers. But your thoughts and our thoughts and his thoughts, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Vikings GM at the NFL Combine. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts and his thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.